time it is, guys? It's the Tuesday after Daytona. That's the second major North American race of the year down. Obviously, the 24 Hours of Daytona was the first, and now we're on the life after Daytona. The big news, obviously, Tyler Reddick wins the 500. It was his eighth attempt. He's the second ever Toyota driver to win the 500. Up to this point, only Denny Hamlin had won the 500 for Toyota, which is pretty impressive considering the amount of drivers that have come through the Toyota camp over the last almost 2 decades. It was his eighth attempt. He only led the last lap, so we'll never be able to take that away from him. Tyler Reddick is 100% deserving of that victory. It's the first 500 win for 2311. It was pretty cool seeing Michael Jordan in victory lane. It was cool seeing Reddick with his family. He went winless last year too, so he's broken the losing streak and kicked it off. And now, for the first time in a while, feels like it matters that he is the Cup Series points leader. Elliott, Blaney, Bubba Wallace, they all watched the win slip away from him, and they were all looking like the favorite at one point in time. Bubba Wallace led the most laps. I believe he had 40. He looked like he had the thing mostly in control as you can be at super speedways. That final pit cycle, it looks like the Toyotas more or less botched it. And even though Reddick won, it seems like on their way back up to the front, Wallace got stuck in the middle and wasn't able to kind of make the moves he needed to do, while Reddick had a lot more gaps to escape where he was getting stuck. Ryan Blaney, when it came to that last pit cycle, once that was all said and done, everyone in the booth was picking Blaney as the favorite, and it never materialized for him. And then Chase Elliott was leading coming out of turn number 4, and it just fell apart on him as well. Couple moves go slightly differently, and we're looking at Chase Elliott as a 500 winner, but all three of those guys are going to have to be waiting one more year. Ricky Stenhouse, Riley Herbst, Zane Smith, all with big days. If Brad Keselowski is a foot and a half further back, I think Riley Herbst is probably the winner of the 500 this year. He was that close. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ends up finishing second. I don't know how he does it, but every year, he's either in the fight for the win or he is spinning through the infield grass. And then Zane Smith, his idea was pretty reasonable if only Tyler Reddick was willing to go with him on it. Zane Smith could have easily run second in this race. But he held back to try and get a run, and then Tyler Reddick took the run from him. And as such, he ended up with a pretty messed up race car. Keselowski and Busch go another year winless. Keselowski had a fighting chance at this race. It seemed like Kyle Busch just did not have the speed in that car. He did sustain some damage in one of those wrecks. How many more years are they going to go? That's a big question that I feel like they have to answer as well. I believe Kyle Busch is in a contract here, and Keselowski has the RFK charters kind of in limbo, but that third RFK charter technically belonging to Rick Ware. How many more years is Keselowski going to race full time? How many more years is he going to be doing Daytona? Will he do Daytona once he's done racing full time? The same goes for Kyle Busch. We don't know what his status is going to be next year. I believe this is the last year of his contract. Are they both going to end up without a 500 trophy on their mantle? That would be pretty disappointing for two guys who are some of the best restrictor plate racers on the sports scene. Going on to the O'Reilly series, RCR and Austin Hill really can't be stopped. Next week, I expect it to be Hill versus Love at Atlanta. No big surprise there. The underdogs are the ones to take the fight to RCR. You know, it looked like Brendan Poole was going to take a shot at him. Ryan Sieg ended up there at the end, and he was nowhere to be seen all day. Jordan Anderson blamed Perkins for Jordan Anderson Racing. They ended up having some really strong runs, and they were the ones kind of taking the fight to RCR. Allgaier was too, but Allgaier had a caved in front end. That car could not have been running at full song. And it kind of leads you to believe, like, is RCR this good? Or are they just really good at making it to the end of these races with a car that doesn't have its front end caved in? I think it's definitely a little bit of both. If Hill and Love are racing at the end of Atlanta, they are going to win the race. It just does not seem like any of these guys in the O'Reilly series have what it takes to push one of them out of the way, except for each other. Chandler Smith, this might be a little bit of hyperbole on my behalf, but Chandler Smith might have saved his career as a Cup Series prospect with his win in the Truck Series race. He's kind of been up and down. He didn't qualify for Daytona, even though I think he probably had the most impressive run of all the go home cars. Went back down to the Truck Series from the Xfinity Series last year, and he goes out and he wins his first time out. Now, a Daytona win is not indicative of the rest of the season, obviously, but this is the kind of stuff Chandler needs to do if he wants to stay on track as a Cup Series level talent. He needs to win. That's all he can do, and he needs to be on it. Colleague and Ram are fun. And competitive. That's the best thing. With all those Ram trucks were more or less competitive throughout the entire race. And as much as I never grew up a big fan of Tony Stewart, I hope he comes back. And I hope other drivers come back too. There's been rumors of Casey Kane. There's been rumors of several others. I'd love to see the Matt Kenseths of the world, the Carl Edwards of the world, take a crack in a truck at some random track. I think that'd be amazing. They don't all have to do it at Daytona. I think Tony's crazy for doing that. But, I think it'd be great if we saw Tony at one of the road courses later on in the year. I hope there's more of this, and I hope other teams besides Colleague take note. We did see this a little bit with Greg Biffle in the Truck Series and later on in the Cup Series. And it showed that, they might be past their quote-unquote prime, but they are certainly no slouches. And it kind of did a throwback to what the Truck Series used to be with the Mike Skinners and the Ron Hornadays of the world beating up on the kids. ARCA in its current form, NASCAR really needs to decide whether it has a place at Daytona. So many guys who do not have the experience or the willingness to learn, junking a ton of cars. It makes me feel old to play the back in my day kind of thing. The back in the days where it was Frank Kimmel and Bobby Gerhardt. And back then you had like the top prospects who came through, like the Justin Allgaiers and the Ricky Stenhouses. Back in like those early 2010s, late 2000s era kind of ARCA seasons, you had a fair amount of veterans in competitive cars who were able to make this a viable show. And the last couple years, it's been the leader either runs away from it because he has the only competitive car in the field and no one can pass him, or the leader gets taken out in the last couple of laps by someone who should know better at that level. I've watched Jake Finch lose 2 of these races because someone did something stupid and it was out of his control. And that's not to say there isn't some great talents in ARCA. Gio Ruggiero won the race. He did some stupid things, but you can't argue he's a talented driver. I think Jake Finch is a talented driver. I think a handful of those guys in the ARCA series are quite talented and have a chance to move up to the Cup Series one day. But there's no kind of veteran presence there who can compete with them in a one-on-one setting to kind of make it so it's not just children's bumper cars up at the front. And that's kind of what they're missing. You can see it in the minor leagues of so many other sports, and to an extent you see it in the O'Reilly and the Truck Series, where these young guys who are trying to make it big have to play against these career veterans and take opportunities away from these veterans and take wins and top fives away from these veterans. And we really just don't see that. All the veterans in those series are running cars that can't compete with the Joe Gibbs and the Nitros and the former Venturinis. And it's really kind of come to show that it's very much almost a junior league. And I'm not sure these guys should be racing at Daytona where people can get seriously injured doing this. We're really lucky we've made it this far without doing so. A cat. This is Bo. Let's see here. Fuel saving at Daytona cannot continue at this extreme of a level. Fuel saving is always going to be kind of a part of motorsports, especially at places like Daytona, hitting the fuel window and the like. But something needs to change to make it so people aren't running half throttle for an entire stage. And I'm not sure if getting rid of the stage caution would fix that at all, or if they simply need to make it so the cars are able to run faster and wear the tires harder so that when you're driving at full throttle, you can drive away from those guys that are fuel saving. Because that was kind of sad to watch. It was 3 wide. It was like you're just watching highway traffic go by. And it does feel like the exciting end to the race almost makes people forget how boring the middle of the race was looking. And I say this as someone who is a Bubba Wallace fan. Watching him lead 25, 30 laps, going 170 was not that exciting. NASCAR's approval process for who is allowed to compete has clear flaws. We saw it in the O'Reilly Series race, we saw it in the trucks, we see it in ARCA, and there's been discussions of it in Cup as well. The approval process is out of whack. Natalie Decker should not have been in that race. She has not shown the skill level needed to race in the second tier stock car series event at Daytona, or honestly anywhere else. There needs to be something done to ensure that the drivers racing in that series are capable. They don't need to be world beaters, they don't need to be world class, but they need to be capable. And if someone does make such a mistake and they are qualified to race there, there needs to be certain things put into place to make sure that that qualification can get taken away. Now, I don't want them to do anything like what the FIA does, where you gotta score a certain amount of points in this series, and this series, and this series to qualify. But I wouldn't be against any sort of license points deductions, where if you're involved in a certain number of incidences, you get suspended. Make it a process to where, people like that who are really just seems to be in it almost like as an influencer role. And I don't want to nag on Natalie Decker, but she is the most obvious one in the room for this right now. And it won't totally eliminate the ride buyers from the lower series, but it will eliminate the ones that end up being outright dangerous. That could have, she almost seriously hurt herself, and she almost seriously hurt Sam Mayer. And that can't be allowed to continue. This is supposed to be the premier stock car racing series, and there are people out there racing like they're on iRacing. It's just not necessary, and there has to be a way to curb it, and I feel like they're just waiting to be reactive to it as opposed to being proactive to it. That's it for the NASCAR. The last little piece, I haven't done a full-time IndyCar grid yet, but the IndyCar grid is now complete. Romain Grosjean's returning to IndyCar full-time. He's in the second Dale Coyne ride. I have high hopes for Grosjean at Dale Coyne. He did really well there in his first little run there. Almost won some races. I think that's a good match, and I hope Grosjean can go out there and step on the podium a couple times this year. Yeah, we'll be doing a couple of these for the race in Atlanta. We'll do a quick prediction and preview for the Atlanta races, and then we'll also be doing some for the Formula One season and for the IndyCar season over the next couple of weeks before those seasons get underway. Anyways, yeah, we'll see you guys soon.